I guess you can say I'm a slim gym bro because I got a lanky meat stick that's ready to be exercised and curled, and you can see the veins pop out at any point. All right, I'm a fool. But you know what? Therapy is for bitches. And that's your little foreshadowing. Welcome to episode 199 of the Often Be podcast with Clint Nelson. I'm your host, Clint Nelson. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to suck some titties. Oh, Jesus. Recording this on June 6th, 8:07 a.m. A little bit later than usual. And no excuse, honestly. Well, I do have one excuse, but I'll keep it from the audience for performance reasons. But yeah, therapy. Therapy is one of those things that us men and us really as a general population, we get criticized for. It is this go-to that if you have any problems in life, just go to therapy, right? And I think therapy is one of the most overrated, promoted, trendy things we have going on in the world right now. I would never like try to convince someone not to go to therapy. And that's the misconception. Is that I'm not saying therapy is complete nonsense. I'm not saying it's complete bullshit. I'm just saying that I think going to therapy for a lengthy amount of time is more detrimental than it is, I guess productive. Therapy should be one of those things that should be a temporary thing. Because I'm a believer that most issues have to be solved internally. And that talking to a random stranger that you're paying who is incentivized to continuously tell you that you consistently have a problem over time, and they are incentivized to tell you why you should keep coming back to them, is not maybe the most productive way to go about your issues. And that's the issue. Therapy is a very profitable business. I haven't looked up the numbers, but when I listen to podcasts, a lot of sponsors are BetterHelp.com, and they are very therapy driven. It's easy to say that therapy will fix your problems, but in my opinion, I think therapy will actually cost you to continuously believe that you have nothing but problems. And maybe problems exist in your life, but to make it the focus of your life, I think therapy within itself kind of drives that within you. That, if you have a problem, you need to go to therapy. I'll admit, as a younger adolescent individual in my young teens, I used to go to behavioral therapy for certain issues, right? And I realized at a certain point, I know health insurance is paying for this. But, my mother, she spends a lot of extra stressful time to take me out of school the first 2 hours a day, every Thursday, to go to see this Dr. Indian woman that sits there and tells me about why my anger problems are a fucking issue. And I get it. And I'm not someone to open up too much. Well, at least open up, out of the mouth. Oh, I'm a mouthful, all right. But what you realize, and I realized this at a very teenage age, adolescent type of thing, that I didn't understand how the health system worked, how insurance worked, and that, a lot of my problems are very internal. And as someone sitting there listening to me and my correspondent vent about my issues is not really solving the problem. And that maybe the problem is the fact that I need to actually identify, work on the problem, and continuously fix the problem, right? And I think therapy is this kind of basic ass excuse to just pretend that you're working on something because it's the bare minimum that you could do to actually just say like, hey, I'm seeing a therapist. And I guess that's a good start. But if you're seeing a therapist for 12 years, your issues are not going to be fixed by a therapist that you have spent $18,000 on in that time span. Just a thought. It's just this crazy thing that we have to pay, like, this is the society we live in. We have to pay someone to be incentivized to want to listen to us. That's the world we live in. And I'm not someone to put your problems on people in your life or random individuals. By the way, this is going to be an hour-long podcast because you know what? We're changing the game here. But I just kind of feel like that therapy is kind of for pussy-ass bitches. I'll say it. Not that I feel like people that seek guidance and better improvement to fix their issues in their life are bad people. But I think at a certain point, you got to realize that your problems are your problems and not anyone else's. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I think therapy. There's actually the song by All Time Low. This punk rock band I used to listen to in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. He has a song called Therapy because he actually lost his brother to suicide. And I feel like a lot of people go to therapy for things that are a lot less than their brothers committing suicide. It's like, oh man, I'm feeling great anxiety for my job. It's like, okay. Have you thought about becoming better at your job? It's like, whoa, hey, that's not what we're talking about here. It's like, oh, well, actually, I'm going to therapy because I feel like I don't really feel like I'm my true self. It's like, okay, have you actually put the time into yourself and really identified yourself with what you really want to do with your life? You're like, hey, don't be asking so many questions I'm not ready to answer. It's like, all right, well, then don't be trying to go to drastic measures to solve problems that you're not even sure what the fucking problem is. And I'm not a therapist, but I feel like therapy and people's issues are so subjective that if I was a therapist, I can convince someone that they continuously have so many problems over a period of time that they can continuously feel like that they have problems that maybe aren't really problems anymore. But yeah. Oh, Jesus. I don't want to sound like I'm being the dickhead, but you know what? I'm kind of on one. I'm on one. But yeah. Speaking of kind of problems and maybe some I should eventually go to therapy when I'm 34 years old, is I saw something that kind of triggered all this. And I was watching a video talking about men and type of self-improvement type of stuff. And I don't really dive into that type of thing. But there was a comment that you'll probably see is that men would rather start podcasts than go to therapy. And as a man that does a podcast, by the way, episode 200. I don't know if you know, that's a fucking milestone. But when you're on episode 200, you have such a relinquish type of confidence about yourself that you say, fuck you. Yeah, I didn't start a podcast because I needed therapy. I started a podcast because I fucking wanted to start a podcast. Did I have issues when I started a podcast? Yeah. Do I have some of the same issues now? Yeah. But that's not why I started a fucking podcast. So when you see tweets or quotes or comments that say, oh, men start podcasts instead of going to therapy. Like, you really think going to fucking therapy is really going to solve everyone's fucking problems? Because, like I said before, therapy is literally designed to incentivize, to continue to tell you that you have problems that you are not in control of, and to quote unquote give it up and let God or Jesus be in charge. And that's my real gripe with Jesus. I didn't even want to talk about religion, but hey, we transitioned, even though he doesn't believe in transitioning in certain things. But my interesting take on a lot of this stuff is that it's very interesting that people want to talk about how men always go to these paths that aren't traditional. One, because if we go to traditional therapy, let's just break down traditional therapy. Therapy, in the most traditional sense, is venting about your problems, bitching and complaining about things. And then you may design a plan to fix it, but probably not. It is just an excuse to complain. You will literally, because we live in such a world that we can't even voluntarily talk about things without feeling like there's got to be a give back of why or how we talk about things. We literally got to pay someone. Think about the world we live in. That we literally got to pay someone to hear about our problems. When back in the day, you could talk to your family, you could talk to people close to you in your life and just talk for a few hours every couple weeks about what you're feeling. And there would be this open understanding of this is just what we do as people. But nowadays, it's everything's got to be monetized, everything's got to be profitable, and not everything is the most genuine of form. And yet people wonder why don't you talk about all your trauma? Why don't you talk about all the things the way you are? Why don't you talk about all your faults of who the fuck you are as a person? And you're just like, why the fuck would I? Why the fuck would I involve my health insurance to bump up my rates just to tell you how I feel the stress of the world is breaking me down? Oh. Because you know what? No one gives a single fuck. And why the fuck would I pay $300 a month for someone to pretend to give a fuck? Honestly. I don't care how much you're making. I don't care if I was making $20,000 a month. I could not justify my budgeting paying someone $300 to pretend, whose job is to be incentivized to give a fuck about why I feel the stress of the world is weighing me down, baby. I'm not an Iron Man, regardless of how I look. But yeah, I think therapy is honestly a poor man's or poor woman's excuse to not actually work on their problems independently. Because, look, not to get too pseudo-intellectual, but if you can't identify your problems as an individual, then how the fuck is anyone else going to really give you advice of the right direction to give you direction of to fix your problems? And some problems are never going to really be fixed. It's all about managing. So when I hear this men start podcasts instead of going to therapy, maybe I'm a proponent of that statement. Maybe I'm a problem of that statement. And I would reply to that simply, let's say starting a podcast was a better therapeutic method than actually going to therapy. I know, crazy. Maybe actually talking about things I enjoy. Maybe actually feeling like my voice is heard. Maybe actually feeling like I can actually provide a very specific personality that the world actually gives a fuck about, instead of talking about my most vulnerable, deepest feelings, actually brings more value. It makes me feel better about myself than just telling someone about why the fuck I was raped when I was 8. Not literally. I was never actually raped. I'm just giving an extreme example. But I don't think I was raped. I don't know. That'll probably be blocked in the algorithm. But the point of the matter is that I think therapy has become this trendy thing that I think people want to latch onto, but not actually understand. Why am I going to voluntarily go into something that is so vulnerable but has very little rewards to? What about therapy is rewarding for a grown adult, especially of the male specimen? Oh great, I get to spend my hard-earned money on someone to tell me about why my problems are not really why the problems are really the problems. Oh great, Like all my conviction and everything I've learned of life is just bullshit. But because you understand human behavior in a very specific manner that's not very specific to human situations, says, hey, you're not actually feeling the way you do because of what you're feeling the way you do. Okay, I'll go fuck myself, right? All right, I've gone way too long on that. That's like 15 minutes plus. So I guess it's like, why is therapy the most I actually kind of wrote some of this stuff down in notes because I actually want to have something to talk about. Why is therapy the presumptive solution to our problems, right? Why do we think that talking about shit is actually the best avenue to actually go about it? For example, if I were to ask you, hey, why did you and your girlfriend break up? Do you think telling me, even if you know the 100% truthful answer, do you think telling me the fact that, oh, your girlfriend just actually wanted a sexually more advanced, that a more physically appealing man, someone with more masculine traits, do you really think telling me that is going to make you feel better? Like, hey, you know what? I just realized the truth. I just wasn't man enough. Like Tony Braxton. He wasn't man enough for me. Even though she sounds more like a man than the man she's complaining that was not man enough for her. Can't make the shit up. He wasn't man enough for me. Or was it Tamar? I don't know. They're all the same. The Braxton family values. I'm such a fool. But yeah, therapy. Shit, what was the... Hold on. Sorry, I actually wrote this shit down. I want to make sure I stay on topic for you fellas and ladies. Why is therapy the presumptive solution? Okay. Therapy has become this backdraw that if we feel that we say the word therapy, it sounds, quote unquote, literally therapeutic. When you go get a massage after a long week at the job, it feels therapeutic, right? You feel like, man, like, I'm getting the kinks out. I'm getting the knots out. Like my hair. Ready or not, here I come. Curl my dick and your baby is young. Oh, Kim Jong-un. Don't worry, we're still under the baby limit, baby. Damn, I'm getting kind of serious on this episode 200 episode. But I think therapy is one of those things. I'm tired of seeing these sponsors. I'm tired of seeing promotion for things. For people that have never actually participated in real therapy, because as a young adolescent, as I mentioned before, I actually participated in psychiatric or type of psychiatric therapy in some sense when I was younger. So when you actually see it from a young age and you actually grow older, you see like, man, like as a young child, since I don't know better, they're going to make me deem like everything I do is the problem. And I'm not acknowledging that I did not play a big factor of my issues. And I acknowledge my issues. But as you get older and you live a life and you understand how the world works and you understand what personality traits are actually necessary to succeed and the parts of yourself that are actually very beneficial, even though they were deemed to be very harmful as a young age, like being very crass, being very one-sided in how you think. Having strong conviction can also mean arrogant. Having anger issues, even though anger leads to aggression, which aggression typically leads to a very direction of life that is very necessary to succeed if you want to do certain things. That consider nothing to direct you, but you directing yourself. Sometimes a heavy aggression and conviction that's sometimes blind at times is very necessary. So there are very character traits that maybe when you were younger, these psychiatrists, that the one identifies himself just because they took a couple courses at a nice university in the middle of a southern state. And they're Indian. Oh, Dr. Indiges, shout out. I'm not saying they didn't know what they were fucking talking about, but I was saying the rent for their psychiatric department was a lot less than what the fuck I pay for where I live. And there's caterpillars all over the place. Um, but yeah. So I just think therapy is a poor person's, not literally a poor person's, but I think it's a lazy excuse to pretend you're working on your problems. I think that should honestly just be the title. Therapy is a poor excuse to say that you're working on your problems. But anyways, speaking of someone that needs therapy, so I'm a big consumer of comedy podcasting, right? And I think comedy in general is a very interesting thing to consume, right? Because obviously there's a humorous aspect. But when you have comedy podcasts, you start getting to know people's personality. And you start hearing all the stories they talk about. And one thing I picked up consuming comedy podcasts and comedians is there is this normalization of alcohol and drinking. So, let's say someone like me who's pursuing the podcasting avenue, right? And I guess you could say more along the comedy, society, culture, whatever. I've thought about doing stand-up a little bit. I think I'd be good if I really put in the time and work to design certain jokes to be very specific. But neither here nor there. But I think there's this weird normalization of alcohol, specifically alcohol, because obviously drugs are present everywhere. But alcohol is this very normally accepted thing when we're listening to comedians. So there's this comedian named Bert Kreischer, right? He obviously had a recent movie called The Machine come out. And honestly, I've never actually really listened to this big machine story that's now turned into a movie. I know that's like his biggest thing that he's known for, but I've never really listened to it from beginning to end. I just know that's what he's known for. But I listen to his podcast, and I find him, at the very least entertaining, sometimes annoying, blah, blah, blah. But whatever. But there's this normalization of alcoholism in comedy. Like, it's pretty well known he's a alcoholic with kids and a wife of 19 years. And what other type of profession or world where we'd be like, hey, there's a guy that drinks every night, gets blasted, and has this whole aura about him that is just about being kind of like alcoholic. And look, I'm someone, I consume once in a while. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I've started to think that maybe alcohol kind of brings the best out of people. And hear me out. I don't literally mean that alcohol brings the best version out of you. But I actually wrote this out in my notes. I think alcohol... Actually, hold on. I didn't even look up the right notes. Here's the title I'll put. Maybe drinking unlocks your full potential. Drinking unlocks your potential. Alright? Hear me out. I don't mean that drinking literally makes you a better person at your profession. Even if that is at the comedian profession, where that type of aura and that type of environment is typically accepted, and it's typically like, oh, okay, I can see how someone being a little sauced up can bring some jokes out of them that they would maybe not think of, right? Or at least they would not have the courage to say. But I think drinking in a controlled manner as a man, and I want to specifically say as a man, because I can only understand how a man thinks. I don't try to understand how women think and all that stuff. But I think as a man, I do think that drinking in a controlled manner, I must specify it, really brings a creativity that is sometimes necessary if you're going to be in this profession. I know, that sounds like an alcoholic talking. But let me tell you, I think to thrive in certain professions, or to thrive in entertainment, or to thrive in things that are unorthodox, or to thrive in things that are unideal, you got to do things that access part of your mind that only inebriation will cause. If you were going to pursue comedy, if you were going to pursue podcasting, to sit there and think that just being your sober self, where you're thinking clearly, you're in your head too much, you're not really thinking freely, is really going to bring these wild, out of this world results. I honestly don't know. And I honestly think that maybe the less you think, the better the results. And I think drinking unlocks and makes you really unlock your potential. And that is contrary to anything you've probably ever heard in your life. But if you have time to listen to this podcast, it's probably actually not fully crazy. Because as this podcast is growing audio-wise, 15,000 views, by the way, all time. Well, 15,000 listens, I should say. But the video is growing too. Couple extra subscribers now. And as episode 200, I keep forgetting it's episode 200. But boy, like, it is very interesting. Like, as you get older, the things that are created as stigmas in your life are somehow kind of made sense for why the things you listen to and consume is considered normalcy. Like, grown 35 to 40-year-old adults are saying, like, hey, alcohol, like, look, it can become a problem. But let me tell you, when you're on it, that shit brings you to a level that if you maximize when you're on it, can really fucking make you be something. Your true self. Maybe alcohol actually makes you more of your true self. People make an argument that actually alcohol and drugs and stuff, it actually makes you a weaker version of yourself. Maybe it actually makes you the stronger version of yourself. It brings you the strength to actually be vulnerable. It will actually bring you the strength to text someone that, man, like, I actually think you're really fucking beautiful. Maybe it's weak because in regular everyday life, without the alcohol, you wouldn't be able to tell. But maybe it's a strength because with it, it accesses a part of you that says, fuck it. I'd rather you live with the result than not, right? But yeah. Alcohol drinking unlocks your potential. And that is not an advice you should ever give the young men. So this is why I should never lead a self-improvement channel. But, and it also sounds like I'm making an excuse to justify drinking and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that if you truly are truly comfortable in who you are, drinking doesn't have to be this taboo thing. Doing drugs, doing substances, doesn't have to be this taboo thing that you have to hide around people. I think the issue is more when people feel like they gotta hide it. Like, either own it and be like, hey, this is what I do, and I know what I'm doing it. And I have a purpose for why I'm doing it. This is episode fucking 200 of the Off and Beat podcast. I'll just admit, I'm a little sauced up. Not too sauced up, but I'm a little saucy. I'm like Sauce Gardner, corner from the Jets. Because I'll be picking off your INTs. You can bet. Ayy. And I'll pet you on the head. And I don't even got a pet. Oh, man. But the way you be The way I be speaking on the podcast, you would think I have Tourette's. All right. But yeah, no, seriously. And you hear a lot of these self-improvements when they get in their 30s and 40s, right? And maybe I'll be like that. They will tell you that they just stopped drinking alcohol because they worry about the after effects of, like, man, it just wasn't worth it. And I get it, right? And I think there's pros and cons of both. Like anything in life, there's pros and cons of both. It's easy to say that, hey, yeah, it's easy to look back. And it's weird to watch yourself when you're inebriated, right? Like to see, because you know when you're different. You know when you're speaking about things from a purest form that you may not or may have been comfortable sharing to the public or to whatever you may have posted on. But it was honest. That's why I'm not a believer that alcohol makes people say things they don't want to say. It just means that they said something that they didn't want to cause a problem. And you know what? There's a skill in that. You know what? And sometimes that's enough to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't do this. But yeah, I'm like 30 minutes in. I should probably change the subject. But yeah, I guess the moral of that is, so yeah, I do think that drinking sometimes for maybe it's an introverted thing. But I think even for extroverts, I think drinking in a controlled manner, and I need to stress that because I'm not condoning drinking alcohol to an excessive level. Enjoy yourself, and then whenever you want to stop, be able to stop. That's the main thing I want to stress. If you can't control what you're doing, you don't need to be doing it. It's tough enough being a guy in this world. And I am not a man advice type of dude, but as a man, I am more than comfortable giving advice. As weird as that sounds. Because you know what? I think I have a good combination of ambitious and life experience. You know what? This is episode 200. I don't know if I mentioned that. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, subscribe, but don't forget to suck some titties. I don't know if I said suck some titties earlier, but in case you forgot, do it anyways. I do think it's very important to kind of just enjoy who you are. This is more of like a reminiscent podcast. Think about it. Think about anniversary episodes. Now to think about right? I remember when I did episode 100. I remember exactly what I told that. It was I went from episode 1 to 100 real quick. I did a Drake line, right? We went from 0 to 100 real quick. Because at that time, I was posting episodes like fucking crazy, man. 5 times a week. I think I got to 100 episodes in less than 8 or 9 months. Now, it took me another year and a half to get another 100 episodes. That shows you how much my mindset and life has changed, right? So I think every time you hit these milestones, it's good to assess what it took to get here and how different you are. I went completely sober for years when I started this podcast. I didn't drink after a certain amount of episodes because I cleaned up my life. But now that when you get your life in control and you can incorporate some fun and actually feel like you're actually like a normal person, a normal balanced person, and not feel like you gotta go to these extremes to just be sober. Think about someone who's just I have to be sober to be a completely one-sided, monolithic, productive person. Is that really someone that you can really trust that has to have everything be an exact way to work? Or do you need someone to be like, hey, I know I made some weird decisions the past couple of days, but I'm still going to get shit that I need done? Who do you trust more? The person that has to have everything aligned perfectly for them, or the person be like, hey, yeah, this happened, but you know what? I still got what I need done. And I actually think that a person that could balance some normalcy in their life is someone I trust more than someone who has to live a very specific, individualistic life to actually be worth the shit. Because it's not realistic. But yeah, I don't know. Any jizz. I'm like 36 minutes in, so I think I'm gonna change the subject. I've gotten a little too sentimental here. But yeah, I'm like a yellow glove, because when you tuck on my wiener, I'm like Anthony Weiner, because the Florida governor's position is always available. Oh, don't give me those crocodile tears. Actually, I saw a video earlier where someone had a pet alligator for pet support, or what is it called? Emotional support. And his type of rationale was like, hey, and they showed, he put his hand in this alligator's mouth and it didn't bite it. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? Sometimes you put your dick in your girlfriend's mouth and she doesn't suck it. That's kind of my rationale for it. It's like, but you know, once in a while, she might be in the mood. Damn, that sounds like I'm actually talking about some extreme, like, rape fantasy. Oh my God, Clint. But hey, she's like an alligator. She be chomping at the bit. Oh, damn. Not literally. Because obviously, I would never stick something inside of something that was not informed ahead of time, because I am not a Gen Z Republican lib. I know that was a huge contradiction, but that's kind of the point. People like pointing out those libs, those conservative libs. It's all the same. It's like this podcast. I just ad lib. And next thing you know, her bones are like, damn, baby, let me get an ad bib, because I be throwing up on your chest. And you my baby, girl. But yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, jeez. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this life. I thought about recently, because this is episode 200. I don't know if I mentioned that. That's kind of, I feel like there's going to be like the tagline in the archive. If anyone were to ever like, please like clip this podcast so I don't have to do the work. Please just clip it and do the work for me. But yeah, I've thought about like, damn, like every time I hit like the 100 episodes or 200 episodes, I'd start thinking about like, damn, like, you know, I've really done this shit. I can't say a lot of my life that I followed through on shit, to be honest. But as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more disciplined. I've become a lot more comfortable in what I want to be and who I am. So it's like a tick in the right directions. And I'm going to say here, because you know what? I'm feeling good about myself. By episode 300, I want to have 1,000. No, you know what? Fuck it. I want 2,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. That's what I want. By episode 300, I want 2,000 fucking subscribers. So that means I'm 1,953 subscribers away from hitting my goal. But I feel like I'll have a catalog to back up what the boys been speaking. I honestly feel like, and I mean this genuinely, and I don't mean this to high off my high horse, whatever the fuck that means, or the tilly off the willy wagon. But I honestly feel like I'm the most underrated podcast in the world because of my production value. Because I don't hit the algorithm with the way I title things, which I'm working on. But most importantly, because I don't think there's a more passionate podcaster on the planet. Like in terms of people that aren't getting paid for it yet. I honestly don't think that. And that's not me having an extreme ego. But I try to listen to some low-key underground podcasts on my level. And I listen to what the fuck they talk about and how they feel about things. And they are either, quote-unquote, afraid to go there. And what they really fucking think. They say generic things, or they try to bush around the idea by being over the top, facetious, and funny, and try to be like cool and swaggy with it. And people that don't do it frequent enough to justify why the fuck people should take them serious. And I am someone that I give so much of a fuck about this, what I do, that when I hear people do that shit, it really actually fucking bothers me, right? So when I say I want to be the best podcaster in America, in the world, quote unquote, is because I truly believe I have the skill set and the talent it takes. And for people that don't, I want you as an audience, I want you to record yourself for 15 minutes. And I don't care what it is you talk about. And I want you to be engaged in it. I'm not talking about if it's good or not. Let me break it down. I'm not talking about if what you're talking about is interesting or good. I want you to listen to it. And I want you to listen to yourself. Are you engaged in what the fuck you're talking about? Because here's the reason why passion and giving a fuck about what you do matters. Because when you have passion and give a fuck about what you do, what anyone else thinks about what you do or what you don't do, more importantly, honestly means less than ever. I'm never, honestly, one of the things I'm proudest of because of the way I grew up, I've never given much of a fuck about what other people think about what I'm doing. But especially now, hell no. It's almost like I feel like I'm a sociopath. I don't know if that's the right term, but you get what I'm saying. I think I have a lot of psychiatric problems. Hence, foreshadowing to my earlier thing about my young adolescent phase to the psychiatrist. But it's kind of funny how all those things that we consider problems in our youth somehow actually benefit us in our adulthood, right? So I just kind of like, I want you to listen to yourself. Listen to anyone that you think you like for 50 minutes to an hour. And I want you to honestly ask yourself, does this person like what the fuck they actually are doing? That's all I want to ask you. Make your own judgment. I'm not telling you what to think. I want you to critically think for yourself. Who gives a fuck? Now, does giving a fuck automatically equal respect? No. Because you can give a lot of fucks about something and no one still give a fuck about you. That's just the way of life. And that's okay. If you're going to enter this business where you're entering an opinion, subjective shit, that's okay. You got to accept that. You got to accept that no one may like your shit. You got to accept that maybe, people just don't want to listen to you for a period of time until you prove that you have a way to appeal to them. And that's okay. The issue with this industry and a lot of industries and a lot of people is this entitlement industry. And I am someone that I feel that if you feel entitled to the strings attached in this industry, then you are not cut out for it. Because the things that people will stick around and have the most interest in is people that they feel like have nothing to lose and don't give a fuck. Here's what I mean, right? That doesn't mean, and here's a misconception with that statement. There are people who are at the top of the game that still act in the most genuine form of what they feel. The Joe Rogans. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, who's come under criticism recently, is Charlemagne the God, who has, quote unquote, lost a few TV shows or a TV show. And he's always been accused of trying to please the upper executives. It seems like he tries to please more of the people who write his checks more than the people who actually listen and watch his shit, who actually write his checks, right? That's the criticism, right? They feel like he's basically a corporate pundit more than a personality at this point. And I kind of get it. Like, I don't listen to The Breakfast Club, but when Charlamagne would say some wild shit, it would go viral. What is the most recent crazy Charlamagne the God shit? Not much. He may say some weird stuff on his podcast, like the Brilliant Idiots podcast and stuff like that, but on The Breakfast Club, he's not out here in person shitting on rappers or shitting on actors or musicians or whoever the fuck that he used to do. That kind of made his name his name. Because the bigger you get, the more you have to lose, the more money at risk. And when you have a livelihood to keep at stake, you're going to think twice about doing it. So when you are essentially the executive of your show at Comedy Central, or you're basically the man in charge at the Breakfast Club, it's like, if I say something and lose a lot of money based on public opinion, is it really fucking worth it? And I think that's a calculation he's really taken. And I'm not going to shame him for it. I'm not one of these people that shame people for moves they make or how they... Because I believe people naturally change based off their circumstances. I think it's weird that we hold people to these standards that you should never change. It's like, no, you should change based off what the fuck you can afford to change or not change. If you have a child and a wife that you have voluntarily made a vow to protect and love and honor and all that stuff, all that good stuff. Like, you can't just go out here and potentially lose the bag, as they say. You gotta accept the fact that, hey, there are things that come with responsibility and popularity. And Joe Rogan, even to an extent, there are things you can see about a show that are kind of like different. When certain people are on, like his close friends, he'll still get into it and have some fun shit. But for the most part, it does kind of feel like a 70% version of what we were accustomed to 4 years ago. Where he would have extreme, not even extreme, but just very concise, contrite, unhesitant views on certain things. And now it feels very calculated. But, it's more about what you can or not willing to lose. That's kind of like they say, like, the less known you are, the more freedom you have. I guess I'm capitalizing on that a lot. But it's like, the less you are known, the more freedom you have because there's no eyeballs on you. And you get to truly develop yourself and what people expect of you when they do start listening and watching you or whatever the fuck, consuming you. Consume this dick, baby. God, I want some... Never mind, I'm not going to say that out loud. I can't believe I almost said that on my podcast. Because I'm a child of Jesus. But Jesus, hey there, across the border over here. But yeah, anyways, I think I'm going to move on from that because I feel like I'm getting too deep into it. For the last 11 and a half minutes, because I'm determined to hit the hour mark because I'm really feeling like I got a lot to say. So we're going to have some fun here. All right, kids, if you turn the handle, you'll be like John Randall. You sack my ball sack, baby girl. All right. And you may be undrafted, but I love me a drafted beer. I'm actually not a big beer drinker. Not even Bud Light. Never really understood that whole scandal of the Bud Light thing. What's weird is like the Bud Light thing. And it was like, if you didn't know about the story of the Dylan Mulvaney or the trying to promote Dylan Mulvaney, trans, and all that stuff in the Bud Light. Honestly, I don't think most people really would have known about it. I think the promotion of it killed it more than the actual result. Because no one really goes out and just buys Bud Light like that. I mean, people buy Bud Light. I'm not saying people don't buy Bud Light or go to the bar and get some Bud Light. But it's like the news media aspect of it really enhanced it more than the actual like natural process of finding out that Bud Light is trying to be more inclusive in certain things. Bud Light is basically Blue's Clues. No wonder why the can is blue. Oh Jesus. You know what they say, man? They say dog is a man's best friend. But so is beer. So if you put beer in the dog's bowl, as I've seen in a lot of movies, I guess a beer and a dog are basically the same equivalent to a man's best friend. You got a friend in me. Alright. Alrighty. But yeah. Oh Jesus. If you were to pull a rifle out, you would shoot your shot. But baby, did you know? That's an AI bot. What's sad is that probably AI is probably spits better game than most men these days, including me. Because if I were texting a lady, if I were texting a girl that I matched with, or just a girl that I met on the street and got her number, I would probably, my first message, if I was trying to be really Swifty, not Taylor Swifty. It's kind of weird. She's like she has the best like live audience tickets where if you've actually heard her play, you're like, oh, yeah, she's all right. Her new music doesn't even really consider her playing instruments and shit. But yet, it's like, hey, she's an artist at heart because of her lyrics. Which that's one thing I do respect to Taylor Swift. Is like in this, especially in the pop mainstream thing, like most artists don't even like pretend to write their music. It's like this accepted thing that artists don't write. Taylor Swift writes her fucking music. And like, I know that sounds like that's a bare minimum, but like, when you get into the main pop stream, the pop like type of phase of the mainstream music type of thing, like that's actually not common at all. Because pop music is actually very hard to write from a pure artist standpoint. But since she had like kind of a country pop background and she was able to transition over time, like I honestly don't think Taylor Swift could sing a song that's not something she wrote. Because there has to be a certain cadence and rhythm to it. So, I think it actually makes sense. Like, when you actually think about it. I think the reason why a lot of people like it's like, like, you're getting her for better or worse. And there's a lot of fair criticism about, oh, she basically uses men for content for her album. She literally broke up with the dude that kissed the security guard 2 days ago. And I think the security guard was a dude. So, actually, it's probably one of the most warranted breakups she's had. But it's like she gets a bad rap for like being with a lot of men. It's like, hey, if your man was publicly seen kissing a security guard at a concert when he's not even a well-known name to have a concert for himself, you're like, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go red. All right. That's not a love story, baby. Just say yes. But Taylor Swift is like one of those things, like, regardless of what you think about her, you can't deny that she's actually a pure artist. She actually writes her own music. Like, I don't care what you think. Look that shit up. Look at, like, I'm pretty sure if you look the top 20 biggest songs in America or the world right now, you would realize that if I had to guess, like 16 to 20 of those songs were not even written by the artist who sings it. Like, that's how often that shit is normalized. So, you know what? Shout out to Taylor Swift. She deserves all the tickets, all the money she's getting. Oh, she's the Nepo baby. It's like, you know what? She's a talented Nepo baby. I hate that fucking Nepo baby. Oh, she came from money. It's like, you know what? Do you play guitar? Do you sing like her? Do you have an aspiration like her? So shut the fuck up. Did you write 15? Because when you're 15, somebody tells you they love you. You gotta believe them. Even though I never did. Oh, Jesus, this got sad. But hey, if you're R. Kelly, when you're 15, she will tell you she loves you. And not only will you believe it, but you'll put a ring on it. All right, Clint. Oh, Jesus. But yeah. Damn, I don't think I've done an hour-long podcast in a long time. I'm doing it just for the sustainable viewers out there. Just for the core audience. So you know what? Here's what I'll do. For the last 3.5-ish minutes, I'm going to talk about how I feel being 200 podcasts in. I feel pretty not affluent. I don't think if affluence is the right term. I feel pretty intrigued. I feel pretty content. Content always sounds like a stationary term. Like, oh, you're just content with what's happy. It's like, no, I'm content with the fact that, like, I'm happy of where I'm at. It doesn't mean I don't want more growth. It just means, like, man, you know what? Sometimes take a step back and be okay with where you're at. Because damn, baby, that booty's fat. All right. And this podcast, it's like a big booty. Because it's fat on injections. And hopefully you don't die from it. Oh, just make sure the board is certified. That's not funny to joke about. But hey, you know what? You voluntarily did it, not me. It's weird how actually people are now blaming men for women going to get surgeries for their body image stuff. It's like, you know what? Here's my view on people that get voluntary surgeries because they feel societal pressure. Societal pressure is this made up thing that is not real. If you're not really truly want someone who would be intrigued by societal pressure, then you're not going to act off societal pressure. And then you will be truly content with someone who would like you or love you for who you are. But the issue is people get these surgeries, they get these procedures because there's a certain type of individual that they actually desire, that they feel like if they don't get these things, they won't be. And maybe they won't be. So you know what? You were willing to take that risk to be attracted by a certain type of individual. And maybe X, Y, and Z may have happened and result. That's the truth about that shit. No one can make you do anything. No one can make you get anything that you don't really want to get. That's the cold hard truth about this shit. But yeah, no, anyways, going back to what it's like. I feel very like in the right direction. I feel like I know what the fuck I'm doing. I feel like this thing is going to grow. By episode 300, I have already said, I think I'm going to have 1,500 plus YouTube subscribers specifically. I truly believe that. And I'm putting that on record because I'm willing to put it out there and be potentially a failure or a complete success. Not a lot of people are willing to do that. That's what makes me different from everyone else. is that I will do an unedited podcast, put my faults on the line, and you guys will look back and be like, damn, much respect. And please, for the love of God, I want a pocket pussy. Not really. That's a Blue Mountain State reference. Even though those are real, some say pocket pussy's better than the real thing. I would never want to find out. Damn, I hit the hour mark. All right. And this is the hourglass moment of the sand dripping and dropping. All right, guys. That was the big 200. Hopefully this is posted by the anniversary, but we'll see. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Most important, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to suck some titties. And boy, yeah, this episode was a doozy in all the right ways. I'm very happy about this. It's a good thing to be at this point. And yeah, I guess I'll just say that the moral of today's pod is that what did I write down? What is the moral of today's pod? Drinking unlocks your potential. Don't take that literal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that things that may scare you may also be the thing that is normalized so much that how are you, like, I guess here's my final thought, right? Because I talked about earlier how comedy normalizes drinking. And then I told you drinking kind of unlocks your potential. So it's going to kind of be this contradicting opinion, but please bear with me. Is that how, as a aspiring person in a field, if I see the most successful people in that field constantly participating in an activity that obviously brings something out of them that makes them successful in that, why would I think that I'm the exception? If you've ever read, I forgot what the book is, but if you always think you're the exception, you become the rule. And you don't want to become the rule, because success is always the exception. And you want to be exceptional, my fellas. Damn, that was a bar. All right. That was episode 200 of the Often Be Podcast with Clint Nelson. But yeah, like, follow, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Most important, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to suck some titties. Yeah, this is the first hour plus podcast I've done in a while. So you guys earned it and enjoyed it. So yeah, you'll see this when you see this, and enjoy it. All right, guys. Have a good one. Damn. Got some nice titties there, buddy.